Which version of Bryson Stott will the Philadelphia Phillies get in 2026? My name is Matt Watson, and welcome back to the seventh inning stretch. After a slow start last year, Bryson Stott caught fire in the second half of the season. In 61 games in the second half, Stott hit for a 294 average with an 855 OPS. There were a lot of factors that went into this improvement for Bryson Stott, but what will matter the most is if he can continue that trend into 2026. The Phillies will be relying on Stott heavily as they look to get back to the World Series. One of the biggest changes for Bryson Stott in the second half of last season was his hand placement. Stott mentioned that in his stance, he felt his hands were too high and began to lower them back in his swing. Once Stott lowered his hands, he started to hit the ball much harder. Stott's numbers returned to what they looked like in 2024, which was the best season of his career. That season, Stott hit for a 280 average. With this adjustment, Bryson was hitting the ball harder, he was getting on base more, hitting for more power, and was an overall positive in the Phillies lineup. In the second half of last season, Rob Thompson did commit to a platoon with Stott and Sosa. While this was something that occurred in the first half of last season, as well as in years past, Thompson really did commit to a lefty-righty platoon. With a left-hander on the mound, he would go with Armando Sosa. With a right-hander on the mound, he would go with Bryson Stott. Now, more often than not, the Phillies did face right-handed pitching rather than left-handed pitching last year, giving Stott the bulk of opportunity. In games that Sosa did start, Stott would often come in late in games, either as a pinch hitter, a pinch runner, or a defensive replacement. The platoon with Sosa worked out great, as the veteran infielder crushes left-handed pitching, and Stott started to really see the ball well against right-handed pitching. I expect this to be the move again in 2026, especially after the end of last season, in which we saw Rob Thompson commit to the platoon full time. Like we talked about in a previous episode with Otto Kemp and Brandon Marsh, depending on the start of that day, we'll see either Kemp or Marsh, and then at second base, either Sosa or Stott. Another reason why Bryson Stott's numbers rose in the second half of last season was due to the four-seam fastball. In 2024, Stott was not very strong against four-seamers, regardless of lefty or righty pitchers. For the year, he had a -6 run value against that pitch specifically, and needed to improve on that heading into last season. And Stott did improve. In fact, he went from a -6 value in 2024 to a +6 value in 2025. That is a 12-run increase in just one season. Being able to hit the four-seam fastball, especially up in the zone, was key for Bryson Stott. He didn't see much improvement against other pitches, but he did regress against the sinker, going from a -2 run value in 2024 to a -8 run value in 2025. Heading into this season, Stott will need to continue his success against the four-seam fastball and find improvement against the sinker. If Stott could have the level of turnaround against the sinker as he did with the four-seam fastball just a year ago, his overall numbers should continue to improve. This is going to be a make or break year for Bryson Stott, as the Phillies have Adam Miller waiting in the wings. As we've talked about previously, I do believe the Phillies are going to give Adam Miller a chance to play every day if he continues to succeed in the minor leagues. If Miller's swinging a hot bat to start the year in AAA, I don't believe the Phillies would hesitate to call him up. That would put the pressure on both Bryson Stott and Alec Bohm. If both Bohm and Stott are swinging a hot bat, they will be able to keep Adam Miller at bay for at least this season. For Bohm, whose contract expires at the end of the season, he is more likely to get replaced by Adam Miller than Bryson Stott. Stott, a Gold Glove caliber second baseman, has proven that he is an anchor in the Phillies' defensive rotation, and if his offense continues to improve, there's no reason why the Phillies should move Stott off of second base. Now, there's obviously the Trey Turner factor. Where does Turner go if Miller comes up to play short? I do expect Miller to be the Phillies' long-term third baseman, but if we run into a situation in which Bohm is playing well and Stott is not, the Phillies might give Adam Miller the opportunity to be the everyday second baseman in 2026. That is why it is make or break for Bryson Stott. If he can hold off Adam Miller and keep second base as his own, I do think Stott will be in the Phillies' long-term plans. However, if his offense is reflective to what we saw in the first half of last year, I think Stott's days might be numbered in Philadelphia. It all depends on Bohm, it depends on Miller, but Stott does control his own destiny. With the adjustment in his swing, the commitment to the platoon, and his improvements against the four-seam fastball, Bryson Stott has positioned himself well heading into 2026. He will need to continue to improve if he wants to lock down the Phillies' second base job for years to come. Which version of Bryson Stott do you think we're going to get in 2026? Let me know in the comments down below.